Hello and welcome to another episode of Free Your Story, Free Your Life. It is, I think, 70 degrees here in Vancouver, Washington. I'm loving the fact that I get to wear a sweatshirt in September, which isn't always the case in Florida. Actually, probably never the case. One of my favorite sweatshirts, I was in Bozeman, Montana. That's what this says, Bozeman, Montana. And this was my Yellowstone trip, which I'll talk about in later podcasts. But I was visiting Yellowstone and I'm in Bozeman, this really cute mountain town. And I'm like, I want a shirt that says Bozeman, Montana. And I picked this white sweatshirt, which in theory, perfect decision. But once I put it on my body, I realized a very imperfect decision because what I've noticed is, and just wondering if you experience the same thing, the minute that white comes anywhere near my body, it's like a gravitational pull to any sort of staining substance every time I wear this shirt. In fact, it doesn't even really look white anymore because I've already washed it so many times and I've probably had it for a month now. The second time I wore it, I was sitting in my bed and I had a huge cup of coffee, and I don't know how it happened, but literally I mean, maybe it was like this, maybe I was drinking and I went like that, something, and it got literally all over the right-hand side to mid-sleeve. So this has had its fair share of stains. So I wanted to talk to you today about the difficulty of transitions and the gravity of making big choices in your life. I remember the time that I decided that I was no longer going to go to the church that I've been going to and essentially no longer be a part of the religious organization that I had spent 33 years in. And I talked a little bit about this last week, but I wanted to talk about the difficulty that comes with massive change in your life, especially when that change is aligned with who you are. And that massive change is creating waves within your life, and especially within the lives of people who love you. I want to go back 2016. After I had done a huge amount of soul searching, and I felt an unrest inside of me, and I could not shake it. And I want to apply this to like so many changes. So this is not just like a change in religion. There's so many times in our lives, right, that we're going along a certain path, and at one point that path served us. At one point that path was okay, at one point, and this could be a relationship, a career, a mindset, a eating habit. At one point that path served us, and it might have even served our trauma. It might have even served a broken place that we were in. But at some point, there's certain paths, there's certain behaviors, there's certain patterns that no longer serve us anymore. But because our brains are so comfortable in repetition and in patterns that it's almost like the brain fights change because it wants you to be comfortable, right? You throw off the equilibrium of your life when you try to do something that is out of the norm. Like you literally shake things up in your body when you try to do something different, because the brain gets into habits. And like, I can't set this mic. I'm like holding this mic. Like I can't, for some reason, this mic doesn't just want to sit on its own. It's like it's having a Marley moment where it's like it has all capability to be by itself, but it wants to be a part of me. So I'm going to hold it for as long as I can, and then I'm just probably going to get into it and do something with it. So I I couldn't shake the um the unrest that was going on inside of me, and like the things that used to bring me pleasure about that environment, or even just going to church. Like, I used to genuinely enjoy going to church, and it was like I started to really dislike it, and like felt like, why do I need to be at this church 3 and 4 days a week, and like, why am I spending hours upon hours here? And the things that I was being asked to do and the things that I was being taught, it just did not align with where I felt like I was at or where I felt like I was going. And of course, in that environment, that sort of free thinking, that sort of displeasure, it's put back on you. Something's wrong with you. Like, you're just not praying enough. You're not loving God enough. You're If your desire is not to be in church, doing church things with church people, or doing these spiritual practices that are like highly, highly praised in that environment, then something's wrong with you. So, what happens is, a lot of times, in my experience, what I've seen and what I experience is like, you can outgrow an environment, you can outgrow a line of teaching, you can outgrow certain environments, certain people. Like, you can outgrow them. And I'm not saying outgrow them as in like I'm so elevated and you're not. I'm just saying that, like, it's like asking me to stay in the 5th grade for the rest of my life. And you're just like, you're capped out here. In no other arena of our life is that acceptable. You know what I mean? Like, we're a very growth conscious society. So it's like, if I'm just staying and I'm at an equilibrium, it's like, and there's no opportunity for growth, and there's no encouragement for growth, and you're just here and you're listening to the same things, you're doing the same things. It, of course, it causes frustration, right? And I felt like I was looking for something else. It's like, it can't just be this. There has to be something more. And of course, I'm testing it because for so long I was taught that mentality, that idea means that you have given your soul over to Satan, that the devil has you. Any sort of desire for growth and development outside of the church environment meant that something was wrong, that you needed to go repent. Something is wrong with you. But it didn't matter how many times I repented. It didn't matter how many times I cried. It didn't matter how many times I like demonized myself or allowed other people to demonize me, right? Because if I'm telling somebody in that environment how I'm feeling, their response is going to be, well, you need to go to God. Well, you need to read your Bible more. You need to pray more. You need to give more, right? You're burnt out. Go give more. You're tired. Well, Jesus Christ is tired. You don't think that he was tired carrying that cross up a hill? In my mind, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm not Jesus Christ. Do you know what I mean? It was like so much like guilt, like guilt ridden, because life outside of that environment, thinking outside of that incubator, was demonized. That's the idea of the world, right? So the world becomes anything outside of the controlled thoughts, the controlled teaching, the controlled relationships in that environment. So when you step outside of that, you can't be controlled. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you step outside of that and you start getting ideas and you start getting teachings, and it causes you to think differently or causes you to live your life differently, then automatically you're demonized. Because in that environment, there's only one way. There's only one way to live. There's only one way to look. There's only one way to operate. And that's the only way. And if you veer off from that, then you're wrong. So really, we're all essentially creating robots of ourselves. We're creating replications of ourselves. And those replications have to make sense. I have to see me around me, because the minute I see something different and that thing that's different isn't explained, that's what I'm going to start exploring. And there's nothing more dangerous in a controlled environment than somebody who starts to think for themselves, or somebody who starts to use the knowledge that they're getting and then compare it with other information. I remember there was one point in my life where one of my leaders told me that you should never read books that are not written by other Pentecostals, and um, you shouldn't utilize other information that's outside of this organization because they don't know, because they haven't been given the revelation like we've been given the revelation. I mean, there's so many things wrong with that, right? But one of the major things is that is the core of control. That is the core of a cult. It's the belief that there's nothing outside of this that you need. And the minute that you step outside and you see something different, then you're going to question everything. When really, if what you believe to be true is true, then you would encourage them to step outside. Compare that. That's like, even if you think about science, right? Science encourages you. What is the antithesis of this belief? Because if you go to the opposite of this belief and you start exploring it, then it either confirms and it strengthens your initial belief, or it allows you to toss that and test something else. What's the hypothesis? And then let's test the hypothesis. So if this is what I believe, this is what I hold to be true for me, then I should be encouraged to explore different things. That way I take personal ownership of it, because now I've experienced it, because now I've tested it, because now I've gone on the journey, however that looks like for me. So making that decision to completely leave and to completely start over, and literally to start at base level, I knew that it would come at a cost. And the cost was really high. And really, when it comes to really important decisions in our lives, the type of decisions that shake us, that we know are going to drastically change our lives. And a lot of times we sit on those decisions, right? It'll start like as a little thought. And sometimes it scares us, like, oh my God, what? Even when I started to have the thought that I wanted to leave the teaching profession, it just came as like a little nudge, and it scared me, because I was like, what? Why would I leave? Because if I leave, then what comes next? And like, if I only ever wanted to be a high school English teacher, like I only ever wanted this. So to leave, but the crazy thing was that before that nudge came, I was starting to feel like, God, I've capped out. Like, I feel like I'm at a peak. I'm either going to go back to school and get my master's so that I can be a principal or take a leadership role. And even then I'm like, but then where? Because you cap out there. Like, the environment, I felt like I wasn't being challenged. I felt like I wasn't growing. Once again, I'm back in 5th grade. Then I'm getting ready to graduate. And I'm either going to have to force myself to sit back in this 5th grade classroom because that's the expectation, or I can say, there's another level. There's another way that I can grow. There's another avenue that I can go down. And it doesn't look like what everyone thinks it should look like. It scares me just as much as it scares all of you. But I'm either going to stay in this position because it feels good to you, because anyone going outside of what we all know that we're supposed to be doing, that scares you. Because when we see people take big leaps with our lives that don't make sense to us, the first thing we do is we get scared because they're doing something that's not going with the norm. Whoa, you're not following the rules. This is the rules. And this person is making big jumps and big changes with their lives. So the first thing that happens is we get afraid. And then the second thing that happens is the mirror gets turned back on us. And the little nudges that we've been feeling and the little pulls that we've been doing, because that's what life is doing. Life is always trying to work for our good. Life is always digging into our deepest desires that we're not sharing with anyone, that we're keeping hidden, and our secret frustrations, and the things that that we just keep that we just keep excusing the things that we're holding on to that life is saying, hey, you can let that go, The mirror gets turned back on us and we start seeing ourselves, and the things that we've been silencing and pushing down now kind of have a bigger voice. So we have one of two choices. One is we demonize that person and we say that person's crazy, that person's evil, how dare they, they've gone insane, they're just living however they want. We demonize those people so that we can feel better about ourselves, so that we can silence it, like, shh, be quiet, that person's crazy, we don't want to be crazy like that person. We demonize them, or we allow that experience, we allow that moment to really shine a light on us and make us take pause and say, now I might not do it like them, but the same discomfort and the same frustration and the same mindset to do something that just shakes things up, is that in me? And can I allow that to stir something up in me? Because I might not, that's not my path, but her big jump maybe stirs something up in me. But see, in the religious world, you can't have that. You can't have people asking that self-reflective question. You can't have people personally reflect over their life and what they believe in. Are they really happy? And are they really satisfied? And are they giving years of their lives and their decisions and their gifts, their talents, are they putting it and investing it into an environment that they've outgrown, that no longer challenges them, that beliefs have actually stifled them and controlled them and literally asked them to leave their authentic identity at the door? You can't have that in that environment. So then we label those people who leave. We label them. In our organization, it was backslider. You're a backslider. And with that phrase, backslider, comes a whole bunch of shit. If you're a backslider, you're probably going to be addicted to some sort of substance, right? You're probably going to start doing drugs because the devil has you, because your protection is gone. Because being in the building with the church, that's where that's a sign that you're protected and that God is with you. But if you're outside of a religion, God's not with you. So now you're open game for the devil. So now you're going to be tortured at night. You're not going to be able to sleep at night. You're going to be addicted to substances. God's going to be angry at you. You become an enemy of yourself. And I mean, that's what you've been taught from day one, is to be an enemy of yourself. That's like the hallmark of control. If the greatest enemy in my life isn't a scary red man in a fiery place in the core of the universe with a pitchfork waiting for me to put me in a pit of hell, to let me burn forever, that's who we believe that we're scared of. But the real person that they make you afraid of is yourself. They demonize you from day one. So from day one, you're taught you were born evil. You were born a sinner. Just like that label itself, when you embrace that label itself, how much it automatically disconnects you from yourself. I remember something one of my leaders used to say, you should be scared of yourself more than you're scared of the devil. Powerful phrase, right? Because if I'm scared of myself, that means that I can never depend on myself. That means I can never trust myself. That means that any sort of authentic, valuable thought that I'm thinking, I have to push it down. That's the devil. Because if that thought didn't come from a leader, and it didn't come from the pulpit, and it didn't come from the Bible, it's the devil. Think about how much that requires dependence upon a system and upon people. Complete dependence. We say it's dependence upon God, but it's not. It's dependence upon people and an organization. Because the minute that I stop depending on that organization and I start thinking like I'm actually very smart. I'm actually my greatest asset. That one of the most beautiful things that I've been gifted by God is my own internal voice, is my own free will, the ability to make my own decisions. If I'm evil, then I shouldn't have had free will. If I'm evil, then it should just be immediately when I'm born, I should be assigned people who tell me what to do and how to do it, which essentially is how church is set up, right? You're we used to call them babes in Christ. You're a newborn in Christ. So here's all your mentors. Here's, make sure that you're watching other people. That's why like in our organization, people would come in and really quickly, especially women, would quickly change the way they dress. Because you gotta follow suit. You can't be in those pants for too long. Otherwise you're wayward. What, has God not changed your life? I can see your crotch in these pants. Satan's walking right next to you in these pants. Get this skirt on. You still want to cut your hair? My God. With Satan's pitchfork? Is that what you want? Oh man, I make myself laugh at that one. But for real, that's the intensity of it, right? So it's like very quickly get people in, get them dressing the same, get them talking the same, get them believing the same. So it's like herd mentality. Don't think for yourself. Don't speak for yourself, especially if you're a woman. Sit down and close your mouth because nobody likes a talkative woman. Nobody wants an opinionated woman because the first thing you're going to be told is that you're not going to find a husband because you're not submissive. Submit to authority. And really submitting to authority is turn a blind eye to anything that's happening that doesn't sit well with you because you are the enemy, right? So if I'm in an environment and I'm feeling like I don't feel like this leader has integrity, like I hear what they're saying, right? Like it sounds really good. We elevate charismatic people, people who can speak really well and have, great great public authority. And most of the time these charismatic leaders are very insecure. So we elevate these very insecure leaders who most of the time are just doing what they're taught, right? Because insecure people struggle with authentic thoughts anyways, because they're not secure with themselves. So they're always looking to other people. So they're looking like, what are these people teaching? And what's this church doing? And what's this pastor doing? How do I incorporate this? Do you have to interrupt every podcast? Hey, let's bring it on down. We're in flow. She's letting Satan use her. Do you know what I mean? She hasn't come out of the cloth yet, but she's on her way. So it's like, it's taking away all of your independent thoughts, all of what you've been gifted the most with, your own goddamn intuition. And it shuts that off. And now it's all about other people. So when we demonize the backslider and we put a label to them, we automatically separate ourselves from them. And we're encouraged to don't hang out with that person. And the crazy thing is, because if you hang out with that person and that person's starting to introduce thoughts that you're probably having too, and they're introducing things that are going on inside of them that are probably going on inside of you too, but now this person is labeled as a backslider and they're connected to the devil, so you better disconnect. So when I left, I knew what the label would be, and I knew what was coming, but I didn't know you can't prepare for the gravity of how that's going to feel. So I remember leaving, and I remember initially it was like people were still keeping me in their lives. It was like almost like Amy's having a moment, like this is just a moment. She's offended. She's been offended by somebody in the church, and we say the term church hurt a lot, which also church hurt was demonized. Like, how dare you voice your hurt in the church, but it's relevant because we get hurt at church. And I remember somebody, um, I remember the phrasing to minimize church hurt would be, well, you get hurt on your job, you know, or your family hurts you, but you still go with your family and you still go back to your job. I mean, if I start with my job first, this is very transactional. If I get hurt at my job, I'm getting a paycheck. But y'all aren't paying me to be here. That's first and foremost. Second of all, I'm not going to a job and dedicating my life to that job. I clock in, I clock out. Also, when I go into my job, I am not told by my job, you are safe here. We love you here. In fact, we are communicating God's love to you. And we are here to shepherd you. And especially if you're my leader, I'm your spiritual father and I'm your spiritual mother. You put father and mother in a title, yeah, it comes with some goddamn expectations. So, of course, the level of hurt in that environment is going to look very different than if a bitch at my job is rude to me. But if I go to church and somebody at church is rude to me, and this is somebody that I'm supposed to consider my brother and sister in Christ, it's gonna land different. My vulnerabilities are there because that's what you've asked for. My heart is there because that's what you've asked for. It's a different level of hurt. There's no comparison. It's a false comparison. So it was tolerance, right? Like tolerance when I was first making the decision. It was like, oh, she's hurt. She'll be fine. But in my conversations, I felt the frustration of people who said they loved me and who said that they were close to me and who called me their brother, not their brother, who called me their sister and called me their friend. I could sense the frustration because I wasn't changing. And it's interesting because you don't understand the impact of an environment and of a situation until you get out of it and look back at it. Because when you're in it, it's so normalized. Even if you're in it and you feel pain in it, even if you're in it and you felt the discomfort of it, the gravity of that environment and it's almost like the veil of that environment doesn't come off until you get out of it and are able to look at it from an outside perspective. So it's like once I got out, I remember having a phone call with one of my leaders. And I remember telling her, I'm just tired. Like, I'm just tired. That environment's not for me anymore. Like, and I was like, I'm just sad. I'm sad that like that environment's just been making me sad. And I just feel like my time is up. So she said to me, you're not sad, you're offended. And you hate the leaders in the church and how they hurt you. And you hate the environment. You feel hurt by the environment. And I'm listening to her and I'm just listening, I'm not acknowledging. And I hung up the phone and I realized, oh my God, when's the last time I had an authentic feeling for myself without someone, first of all, telling me how to feel and what to feel, or someone correcting a feeling or thought that I expressed? Because that was so normal for her to say it, because I had given her the right to say that I had created in my life. I had become so hands off with my life that I was literally allowing people to tell me how I felt, that I had authentic feelings, but I allowed people who I thought were smarter than me or who I thought knew better about my life than I did. I let them tell me how I felt. And then I denied my authentic feelings. And I got off the phone and I was like, I can't talk to her again. It's too much. I've given away too much of myself. I don't even know how I feel. And one friendship after another bottomed out, gone, didn't want to talk to me anymore. um, hard conversations with people who felt like I abandoned them, that I betrayed them, that I betrayed their family. Um, my mom was disappointed. My sister was all over the place. My dad was just a lot of disappointment, a lot of confusion. And also during that time period, I just felt like people weren't listening. It was like people wanted to tell me how they felt about my transition out and how they felt about my decisions, but they weren't letting me tell them how I felt. And I realized that it wasn't new, that was something that had been continuing, that it was just I couldn't say like this is how I felt without feeling demonized or without feeling somebody redirecting my feelings, right? Because in the church, if I'm saying I'm really frustrated in this environment, instead of just listening to that and letting me unpack that, it was, well, you're not frustrated. It's just that you're not focused on God, right? It's once again, I'm wrong. So then I'm now, instead of me just standing in whatever truth I was standing in, because that's my truth is not the same as your truth, and your truth is not the same as my truth. And if somebody tells me what is the truth, I would challenge that to say, it's not the truth, it's your interpretation of what somebody else has identified the truth as. And that's a whole other podcast that I highly look forward to dialoguing with you. But I I remember just being talked at and not talked to. And I went from feeling like I had a community behind me, which I never really had a community behind me. I had a community behind my performance. I had a community behind my good behavior. I had a community behind the my surrender to the control and manipulation in that environment. But the minute that I stepped outside of what was approved, the support left, which then leads me to that wasn't support at all. That was just herd mentality. Like, oh, you're a part of our group if you're doing everything we think you should do. We love you when you're doing everything that I think that you should do. That's not fucking love, that's control. The whole environment's control. I love you to the level that I can control you. But the minute that you stop being controlled, I withdraw my love from you. And it's like, I have a version of who you should be because it's the same version for everyone. I have a version of what your life should look like. And because you're not living that way, I will withhold my love. And um, even the evolution of my relationship with my mom and my sister, who I love so dearly, always have, always will. One of the ways that I felt, and there's nothing that I'm sharing with you that I haven't shared with them, but there's in many of our conversations, I felt like the person that both of them had seen me as and had wanted me to be was now unfamiliar to them. So they're both of them distanced themselves from me for whatever reason. And a big part of it is that when you're in that environment and you watch other people walk out the door and you watch them being labeled as backsliders, you don't ever think that that's going to happen to your family. You don't ever think that you're going to have to address that because you think we're all going to stay here and everyone's going to be, we're just going to keep up this really great facade that everything's okay and this is going to be perfect. But my mom nor my sister were ready for that. I wasn't ready for that. I never thought that I would leave. So now we have to learn a whole different way of life. And a lot of what my family had to learn, and we're still learning. This has not come with a lot of bumps, with a lot of bruises. Um, they had to learn how to genuinely love without the idea of control. Because I told them, Love from people who are still in that environment doesn't feel like love. It feels like, let me love you back to this. Like, I'm going to love you until you come back to the church the way that I think you should. Back in your skirt and get these earrings out of your ears and wipe that makeup off your face and start growing your hair to the ground. Because that's in that environment, that is the acknowledgement of you being close to God. I don't care how they say that's the acknowledgement of it. Let me love you back to this. And I communicated that I don't want that type of love because that's control. What you're saying is that I'll love you now, but I'm just being patient until you change back into what I want you to be. No, thank you. That's not fucking love. That's control. I don't want somebody who says I love you, but I hate the way you live. Then you don't fucking love me, because how egotistical of you to believe that you know how to live my life better than me. You don't. None of us do. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Neither do you. We're just making this shit up as we go along. And you're living your life based on your experiences, based on your insecurities, based on your perception, based on your interpretation of this thing that we call life. And that's how you're living. So I celebrate it, whatever that looks like. Even if to my eye, what you're doing looks crazy. It works for you. That's your path. That's your journey. Who am I to tell you any different? Why do we do that? We don't need to. People are allowed to live their lives in the way that they see fit. Let them live their lives. Like how boring to believe that God has placed us on this earth to all live the same path and the same journey. And the path and the journey to have a colorful, intense, fulfilling spiritual relationship with a higher power looks the same for everyone. And you have the ability to interpret when it's a good spiritual relationship and when it's a bad. According to who? Who appointed you that? Based on what? And why? Why does that even need to be? Why do I need to tell someone who to come? Why do I need someone to come up to me and say, man, the life you're living, spiritually stellar. I don't need you to say that. I don't need that. Everything that we need has been given to us so that we don't need outside validation or confirmation or anything to guide us. We are our guide. If God is inside of me, why am I reaching outside for anything? Anything that comes to me is just a byproduct of what's already going on inside. But when I learn to go here first, then I make the goddamn decisions that I want to make. I feel like that's the beauty of life. And then what we receive on the outside, this is just feedback, and we get to determine what we want to do with that. It's not essential. It's just it's not essential. It's just the additives that allow us to either grow something or allow us to take a different path. But when I learn to depend on me first, then what comes into my life gets filtered through me. I get to decide. Instead of saying, can't trust this, let me go here. And here has her opinion and his feedback and her feedback. Now I got 5 goddamn conclusions. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. But when I go here first and somebody gives me their feedback, I can take it as an additive and say, oh man, universe, thank you so much. I can take it as something to think about. Oh, okay, well, this is something to think about. But at the end of the day, the decision is made on what I know and what I feel and my truth. Otherwise, and this is really the crux of this entire conversation, otherwise, I get to the point where I got in 2016, where I realized I have given away my ability to think freely, to live freely, to feel freely, to navigate my life freely. I gave that away a long time ago. And now My life is being lived based on somebody else's interpretation of life, somebody else's values, somebody else's words. Even when it comes to the Bible itself, I'm living my life based on somebody else's interpretation, somebody else's words, how they're viewing this, how they believe God spoke to them about that. Well, that's perfect, but that's for you. That's for you. And I celebrate that. It's the same thing in a relationship. I can look at the way I can sit around and watch how other people operate in their romantic relationships. And the minute that I look at somebody else's romantic relationship and see, and I think, oh, damn, like, yeah, I like what they're doing there. Okay, yeah. Okay, so what are you guys doing? Okay, perfect. Let me take all of that. And now I'm going to come back to my romantic relationship. Now, mind you, I'm not married or dating either of those people. I am dating this person right here. But I take all of that and I say, okay, yeah, yeah, give me all of that. I'm going to take all of it. And I come back here and I look at my partner and I'm like, okay, so this works exactly for them. And this is what love looks like. And this is how love thrives. And this is how love is lived out loud. So let's apply that exactly to us. And you know what's going to fucking happen? It's going to destroy my relationship with him. Because what it does is it takes the focus off of the beauty of having a relationship, which is the individual, and makes it a system. It makes it behaviors and performance and processes. That fucking ruins life. The beauty of life is just to getting to know you as an authentic human being and living that out. So so when I left, of course I'm living my life extremely right or left, whichever one's super conservative, right or left. That was how I was living it. And when I got out, I went all the way in the other direction, you know? And going in that direction, I don't even want to call them mistakes, but I learned a lot because trying to find that equilibrium is really, really the beauty of life. It's just trying to find your equilibrium because in anything, you want moderation, right? And in anything, we're just looking for a balance in our life and not a balance as in like time, work, the way we normally say balance. A balance with figuring out what level of certain elements am I putting in my life? What feels good to me, right? We used to always demonize that in church. It's not about how you feel. No, but it is. Feelings are powerful. Feelings are the feelings are what bubble up. Feelings are what is tangible to us that allows us to explore deeper. A feeling allows me to get to know myself better. A feeling in a romantic relationship is the foundation, is the invitation to get to know me better. If you feel something for somebody else, it's a fucking invitation that says, "Yes, come. Please get to know me better." That feeling, that's an invitation. Our feelings are an invitation to get to know ourselves better. Yes, I feel sad. Come, get to know that better. There's something underneath that. But it was like really leaning into just fucking feeling and enjoying just feeling all of it at the level that I had wanted to feel for so long. But I'd only been given this like really small box. But I just want to say this, and this is not just a it's not just about religion, but anytime you feel tasked or you feel a nudge that is getting louder and louder and louder that will not let you rest, and you are wrestling with that decision because you know that it's going to cost you something. And in your mind, it will cost you everything. Yes, it probably will. But that's not the scariest part because what it's costing you are all of the things that are literally suffocating your life. So, what you are giving up, though it feels like death, and it feels like it's everything I've ever known to be true. It's all the things that bring me comfort. It's what I know. And you're holding on to it so tightly because you know how great the cost will be. I'm telling you, what you're holding on to is essentially what you are being crushed under. That what you're holding on to is actually suffocating you. But when you let it go, when you make the decision and you let it go and you allow yourself to grieve what you lost, because anything that you lose, there's going to be a grieving process to it. Anything. Once you let it go, what's on the other side of it is your life. It's interesting because, like, even the relationships that I let go during that time period, those relationships that I had held on to so tightly and were so prominent in my life, once I let them go and I grieved it, what happened was that two friendships in my life that I had always had and that were prominent became central. And these two women literally rallied in my corner and became and still are the most foundational relationships that healed me in a way I never thought imaginable. Because we heal in relationships just as much as we hurt in relationships. And it was like, had those other relationships stayed, I would have never knew this strong connection and support and the beauty and how much these relationships like literally came into my life and saved me. And then it's like giving up a certain mindset of a career, like a career option. It was like holding on to the fact of like, God, I thought I was going to be like a full-time minister. I thought I was going to like travel and like teach women about biblical principles and like do all this shit. Once I let that go, on the other side is a fucking writing business. I didn't know that that was even an option. But once I let that go, it opened up opportunities and possibilities that I never thought imaginable. Once I let go of conditional love that I become so used to in a traumatic situation, came unconditional love that I could never imagine. The relationships and friends that I have in my life literally bring tears to my eyes because I didn't know it existed, but I wouldn't have known it existed until I got rid of all of this noise, all of this shit that's suffocating me, that I'm used to, that's become normal for me. It's killing me, but it's normal. The minute I get it off of me, the world opens up. And it's scary at first. I feel like I need to say that. It's scary at first. Anytime you take a major leap and a major jump in your life, it's so scary. That transitional period. That's a lot of times why we don't do certain things, because that transitional period and the fear of what if I make this choice and it doesn't turn out in the way I want it to? First of all, it probably won't. There's a scripture that comes to my mind all the time that I truly believe that God brings to my heart consistently. And it's eye has not seen, ear has not heard, neither has it entered into the heart of man what God has prepared for those who love him. Loose translation. So where I am right now, the life I have right now, if you had asked me in 2016 if this was my life, fuck no. I didn't know that this existed. I didn't know the love that I'm experiencing right now was even possible. I didn't know that the people in my life that I have right now even existed. I didn't know this job existed. I didn't know the ability to travel like this existed. I didn't know I had this level of courage inside of me. I didn't know that I had this level of fucking crazy inside of me. I didn't know, because you don't know until you jump. And then what happens is that you allow yourself to go into a life of uncertainty that says, not this. I don't know what comes after, but I know it's not this. And if all life is showing you is the next step in front of you is to get the hell out and to make that change, That's the only step that you need, because every step after that will reveal itself. I remember I was talking to my cousin, um, and it was during one of these like tough transitional points. And she said, Amy, God cannot direct the steps that we don't take. Because there's a scripture in the Bible, the steps of a good man are ordered by God. But if you're not taking steps, how can they be ordered? So it's taking one step in front of the other step and in front of the other step. And also knowing that you're going to disappoint a lot of people. You're going to disappoint so many people. And a lot of those people are going to be people who claim that they love you. And some of them they might love you. And a lot of times disappointment comes from their own fears. Fear of them trying to protect you because they think that life should be lived a certain way and you're not following the rules. That scares them. Fear of you failing, and especially if they're family, you fail, that's going to look bad on them. I know that I've embarrassed my mother. I know I have. I know that I've disappointed her. I know that. But I also know that, like, and I'm sure my mom would agree, this is not my mom's life. So I'm either going to live Amy's life authentic to Amy, or I'm going to live Amy's life that is orchestrated or that is controlled by all these people who've attached their emotions and their feelings to my life. If my life hurts your feelings, if my decisions hurt your feelings, if what I'm doing with my life disappoints you, that's a personal problem. That's not my problem. And I know that that probably sounds cold, but that's the reality. Because the other path, the other idea is that I'm living my life based on everyone else. And then none of your decisions are authentic. Know that you will disappoint people. You will. And they'll either get over it or they'll keep being disappointed. But the person that you should be the most afraid of disappointing is yourself. And is the life that you know that you want to live and the life that you know you can live. And let me just say this too. If it's inside, if it's a desire, if it's something you feel, then it's something you can have. Know that. You don't have to know the how. I say this all the time. Even when I made the decision to pack up all my shit, get rid of the rest of it, and I was like, I'm getting on the road. It's interesting because I've made so many changes at this point and I've disappointed so many people at this point in my life. This change, too easy. Because I realized when I'm sharing what I'm doing with other people, I'm giving you information. This is not a discussion. I've already discussed it with myself. So if I'm making a major change and I feel like I'm in the beginning stages of it and I'm just toying around with the idea, I'll talk about it in the context of what do you think about this in just general terms, just getting people's feedback, seeing what they think. Not about me, but just the general feedback. Have you ever thought about just like traveling and like, what are your thoughts on that? Because that's how I learn essentially is through discourse. It's just like, I don't know, just hearing the words out and hearing myself talk. But even before I gave this idea opportunity to breathe, I sat with myself. I journaled with myself. I made sure that the purity of what I was feeling was me, influenced by me. And then once I made the decision to travel, this is exactly how it looked. Um, yes, friends, family, I love you all so much. I'm just letting you guys know on the 28th of June, I'll be leaving. I think I'm just going to travel. Here are the places I'm going to. I love you guys so much. Because if I do it differently, right? If I go to somebody and I say, I'm kind of thinking about this, like, what do you think? A lot of times, if I'm not solid on the idea of myself, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start relying on somebody else's affirmation and validation for me to live my life. And I don't want to do that because I've already done it. Because then what happens is that fears that I didn't have now are going to be incorporated by somebody else's fears. So if I go to somebody and say, what do you think about me traveling all over the country by myself? If they are naturally fearful, they're going to be like, oh my God, what do you mean? What if you're in another state and you get sick? And like, what if you're driving and someone carjacks you? I mean, these are all valid, right? There's fear in anything that we do. If I'm not solid, now I'm taking on somebody else's fears and somebody else's insecurities, and then I'm not living my life for me. I am living a watered down version of my life, clouded in everyone else's opinions, everyone else's fears, everyone else's insecurities. So sometimes the biggest decision that you can make is just taking the step in front of you that says, not this. That's a big decision. Not this. I don't know what that is, but it's not this. And when you take that step, then the next step will be revealed. And it's like, okay, this. So it's not this anymore. Maybe it's this. Okay. Maybe it's this. Okay. And the beautiful thing is that once you make that big decision for you and you stand in it and you feel how that feels, it gives you power and it gives you more confidence in your own voice and in your own self. And then you realize that God has been on your side the whole fucking time. He's not angry with you. He's not disappointed in you. He's not telling you that you're a bad person. I don't believe that God is afraid of our questions and is afraid of our free thinking, and that God is afraid of a life lived authentically to who you are. That's what I believe. So wherever you're at in your decision process, and maybe you're not even in the decision process, maybe you're just with me through this journey and you just like hearing my stories, which is, hey, I love it. But wherever you are in this process, you're in the right place. Even if you are in a spot that you know you need to get out of, you're in the right place. Now you just have to decide what that next step looks like. And if that next step is saying, not this, the best next step that you can take. But the most important thing is living your life for you, whatever that looks like. Because I'm still figuring it out. And hopefully you're still figuring it out too. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Free Your Story, Free Your Life, and bringing me into your life, letting me ramble on about my stories and share things I've learned and things that I'm still learning. So I will see you all next time.